Welcome back, folks, to the WP-Tonic show. This is episode 607. I do say this quite often, but I really, really do mean it this time. We've got a returning guest. I think he's one of the more interesting people on the internet. We've got Rands joining us again. Rand is the former CEO of Moz, or the joint founder as well, but he has moved on. He is now the joint founder and CEO of SparkToro. So we're going to be interviewing Rand about his views about SEO, diversity, and anything else that comes up during the interview. I've also got my co-host, Stephen. Stephen, would you like to quickly introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name's Stephen Souter. I'm from zipfish.io. We make WordPress fast by optimizing the code that runs WordPress and the code that lives on the server.
And Rand, would you like to quickly introduce yourself? But I'm not sure if we need to, because if they don't know who you are now, if they're involved in the internet, good luck to them.
No, Jonathan, that was a very kind intro, and I'm thrilled to be back. And Stephen, it's great to connect and meet with you as well. And yeah, I'm kind of curious. You said, what was the name of your company?
Zipfish.io is the URL.
Zipfish.io. Okay, yeah. SparkToro runs WordPress on our site, so I wonder.
Oh, nice, cool.
Yeah, he does a great job. He's made I've got a rather large website. He helped us make it quicker. So
I might send this over to Casey, my co-founder, who runs the technical side of things, and just see if it might be a match for us. So look at awesome. That, helping each other already.
There we go. That's what
live
we do.
And in real life.
So Rands decided not to introduce himself, but that's fine. So before we go into the main part of the show, I just want to talk about one of our great sponsors. They're much appreciated. They enable us to get great people like Rand to come back on the show, and that cost us. Let's get this right, Jonathan. I always struggle with that. I don't know why. They help you get into podcasting. I've been doing podcasting now for 6 years. Yes, I'm that old. And they're a great platform. You store the audio files with them. They produce the RSS feed. They've got a fantastic, simple to use interface. Very clear to use, which is not that easy to achieve. Simplicity is hard to achieve, but it's really easy to use. I had over 600 episodes that I had to be moved from my previous podcasting provider. They helped with that. They were fantastic. They got Matt Medeus as their marketing director. You know Matt from the Matt Report, a great guy. So when I heard that Matt was moving to them, I thought, let's investigate. Had some discussions with them. My previous major sponsor, Kinster, after 3 years, decided to move on. It was an amicable breakup. But they decided, Custos decided they would join us. I suggest that if you're looking to get into podcasting yourself or for your clients, go over and have a look what they've got to offer. And by the way, it's just fantastic value as well. So let's get into the main part of the discussion, Rand. Like I said before we got live, I watched some of your recent interviews, and one of the main things that came to me was, you were saying that in 2021 to have effective SEO, you really got to be engaged in building a brand. Is that still one of the key factors you think somebody's got to understand when they're engaged in SEO now? And has your thoughts moved on in any shape over the past few months?
Yeah. So, Jonathan, first off, I want to correctly and accurately represent my experience, which is obviously I was in the SEO field for 17 years with Moz, but I left that company 3.5 years ago. And I have not been in SEO since. So whenever folks say, hey, what do you think about this SEO thing? I always say, I am no longer a professional. SEO moves incredibly fast. And so, look, if you are trying to, get best practices and tactical
well, it's a strange, I'm sorry to interrupt, Rand, I'm not being rude, but it's a strange thing, isn't it? Because I totally understand what you've just said, but you are the kind, you know, whatever happens in your life, you're always going to be linked to SEO and Moz, aren't you?
We'll see. We'll see.
Right.
I am hopeful that whatever that my past career is not the end, nor is it the biggest thing that I'll do in my life.
No.
That's my hope. I could be wrong, but I was going to say, with regards to this particular question around like my views on how to do, you know, SEO well today, I think almost every SEO professional that I'm still connected to would say that elements that are correlated and connected to building a brand online and offline are often very strongly correlated to earning rankings and traffic from Google. And that has not changed, you know, over the past 5 years. It has only increased. It has become more and more true. And I think that we can, you know, reasonably assume that it will continue to be more true, because Google's goal is to represent what users want in their search results, and what users want and resonate with, what they click on, what they search for, what they prefer over other results, what they buy from, is based on their brand knowledge, right? A brand that I am familiar with, that I know, like, and trust, is far more likely to earn my business than one that I don't. And I think very frequently Google sees that when they serve up search results with a bunch of, you know, URLs and websites that people don't know, don't recognize, haven't heard of, those searchers don't click. They click the back button, they choose a different search, they try to find something else. And so Google realizes that, you know, it's a machine learning system, has been for years. It's going to start preferring results that users prefer, and it will find signals to show more and more results that users prefer. That's how machine learning works. That's how it works in social media too, right? Facebook wants to show you more things you're likely to click on and engage with and stay on Facebook. Twitter wants to keep you on Twitter. Reddit wants to keep you on Reddit. YouTube wants to keep you on YouTube. This is the way of the tech giants.
Yeah, thanks for that. I wasn't being disparaging about you doing greater things either, because what you've done at Moz, let's be frank about it, you know, what you've done in your career so far, you've done more than 95% of the population on the planet anyway. So depends how you know, how you looking at things, really, doesn't it?
Yeah, right? That's very kind, Jonathan. I don't know that that's true, but right. Certainly I had a lot of good luck and good timing, and a wonderful team, and a whole bunch of people like yourself who supported me for you know, just years and years, and I will always be very grateful for that.
That's totally true, but it does need talent and hard work, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, this is one of those weird things, right? I don't know how you guys feel about it, but I am very anti sort of hustle culture and anti meritocracy. Right?
Well, it's a bit like dating, isn't it? Really, you know, it's a bit like, you know, we're always attracted to other people, but there's a way of doing it, and there's a way that comes over as really icky or creepy, isn't it? So it's, you know, I see it in the kind of mixed metaphor of dating. There's a decent, honest way of doing it, and there's a real icky, horrible way of doing it, isn't it?
Yeah, I think that's true. You know, what I think is weird about sort of the modern era that we're in, is that there's this belief across a lot of tech and entrepreneurship and even in digital marketing that you sort of have to always be hustling and working, you know, very long hours, and that this is a badge of honor, and also that people who work fewer hours or less hard deserve less.
Yeah.
And I don't find that to be true at all, right? I think all human beings deserve a base level of, you know, dignity, no matter how hard you work or whether you can't work at all or don't work at all.
It's also, it's very American in a way.
It is very toxic American.
It is, you know, America's got some great strengths, but I do agree with you. I'm from the UK and I lived in Europe.
You, Jonathan?
Yeah,
I can't tell.
I know you would never guess, would you, Rand? All right. I'm going to throw this over to my better half, Stephen. All right. What would you like to ask, Stephen?
Just diving into what you were saying there a little bit ago, I think what's interesting is that so often in marketing efforts, people are trying to play the game for the big company that they're trying to market to. So, like YouTube, let's say I'm playing the YouTube game and trying to game those algorithms, or I'm playing the SEO game and I'm trying to play to Google, or I'm playing the LinkedIn game, or whatever, right? There's all these platforms. And there's so much time and effort trying to like figure out how to, I don't know, manipulate the data or change what you're doing to just try to edge out the competition a little bit more. But in reality, like you were saying, is it comes down to what are the humans doing? Like Google rewards humans for attention, and a better brand is going to hold that person's attention. And so I've always wondered, like, what would happen if somebody would take all the time and energy that they're putting into optimizing, their SEO stuff and writing all this content, and just say like, hey, actually, let's build engaging content and just let it do what it does. Like, do you believe that ultimately wins out in the end, or do you have to be there playing that game to make it work?
This is one of my favorite questions. Like, Stephen, I want to give a whole presentation on this. Like,
I want to hear it.
Yeah.
This is what I think about when I'm like going to bed at night.
Yeah. I find this so fascinating, right? Because I think that simultaneously both things are true, right? When I look at people who've had incredible success building brands online or offline, it is almost never the case that they started with SEO and content as their primary sort of marketing tactics. It is almost always the case that they started with product and brand marketing. I like to talk about there's a whole bunch of case studies that do you guys follow Ross Simmons from Hustle and Flow? He runs an agency and really
I'm familiar with him, not closely though.
Yeah, really smart guy. The agency does a ton of phenomenal work, and they do a lot of case studies, and the case studies are really excellent, right? So they look at like Stripe and Airbnb and Canva and Atlassian and a whole bunch of other, really big companies. And when they do the breakdowns, right, they're like, here's how Airbnb won at SEO and content. And the one critique that I have with that is Airbnb did almost no SEO, literally virtually zero SEO until about 5 years ago, when they were already a massive dominant brand. When Airbnb was more searched for, in whatever, 2016, than all vacation rental keywords, generic vacation rental keywords combined. Yeah. If you added up every vacation rental, home rental, all that kind of stuff, short-term home rental on Google Trends, and you compared it to the Airbnb search, Airbnb just dwarfs it, right? Dominates. Yeah. So when Airbnb finally built an SEO and content team and started, ranking for homes for rent in Rome, vacation rentals in Tuscany, all that kind of stuff, they're so far ahead of the game. They are so much more likely to already win because they know searchers prefer them. They know that Google has seen, hundreds of millions of links pouring into their site. Every ranking factor you can imagine, Airbnb has nailed it. So
yeah, they're just like expanding. Like they're expanding into the SEO. Yeah, they already have that weight, that brand capital.
Exactly. They have built up the brand capital, and now they are spending it to win at SEO and content to get sort of the last, I don't know if it's 15% or 30% of the opportunity that's in front of them by doing that. Another great example that folks, I think don't talk about enough is Amazon. Amazon, I remember there was this great story that made its way around the circles here in Seattle, because Amazon's obviously a Seattle company. And so Jeff Bezos was at a picnic or a July 4th barbecue, something like that. And his mother, and he was asking his mother-in-law in 2007 or 8, something like that, how she used, Amazon, how she found products in Amazon. And she went to her laptop. It was like still laptop times for her, not phone times. Went to her laptop and searched Google for the product that she wanted on Amazon, and then scrolled down and couldn't find it, and went to page 2 and couldn't find it. And apparently Bezos comes back to his executive team meeting the next Monday and is like, that's it. I want to rank for everything. And so Amazon builds out an SEO team. And by 2011 or so, Amazon is dominating search results, right? But they were so awful for a decade plus at SEO. But what did that really harm their business? I mean, maybe they lost out on some opportunity. Maybe some other people got some wins. But I look at those and I say to myself, gosh, if you want to truly win on the web, I don't think SEO and content is the starting point. I think you can absolutely execute on it well, better than Amazon or Airbnb did during their growth stages. But if you count on that, you are only serving existing demand versus creating new demand and building a brand online. Man, the value of that is so much more extraordinary. And frankly, I think it's kind of easier too, because SEO is just so darn competitive today.
It certainly is. I think we already got to I had quite a long-winded intro, didn't I? So I think we got to the half stage. I think we got Rand for an hour anyway, so we're going to be having some bonus content anyway, or 45 minutes or whatever, until he tires of me. So we're going to go for our break and we'll be back in a minute. We're coming back. We got the granddaddy of SEO and intellectual thought on online subjects anyway. You've got Rand Fishkin back on the show. So Rand, I personally linked to how you finished the first half. I think if you're a smaller company and unless you've got a real monopoly idea like Peter Frieth, the former founder of PayPal, talks about, you got a kind of a monopoly idea like Facebook. I think if you're going to compete in a small company, you've got to find a niche. You've got to find, with my company, WP-Tonic, we build membership and learning management systems for entrepreneurs, education establishments and corporate clients. But that's our niche. Education, building a platform for clients around education. Stephen's around making WordPress quicker. You got to find your niche. Would you agree with that?
Oh my God, absolutely. I think one of the worst things that you can do as a business owner, as a marketer, as a product creator or an entrepreneur is to say, oh, we're going to serve everybody. That's the worst positioning that there is, right? And your marketing, you will have such an incredibly hard time trying to win at that versus building a brand that solves a particular problem for a particular audience. And then over time, you can expand either the problems that you're solving or the audience that you're solving them for. But if you try and start from everything for everyone, you're going to have a terrible time. Even the monopoly brands, right? Even folks like whatever it is, Amazon and Airbnb and Canva and Google, right? I mean, Google is probably the one that was closest to, we're going to solve a problem for everyone. But what did they start out with? We are going to build a better search engine for super computer sophisticated savvy nerds in 1998. And then we're going to grow our web index and we're going to do all these other things. But that was the target market at the time, and that was the problem that they were solving. So Jonathan, Stephen, I think both of you are very wise to say, for this audience, we solve this problem better than anyone else.
Yeah, I think it helps a lot when you are so niche and then expand from there, right? I mean, kind of like what we were talking about with brand moving into SEO. Like, it's one thing to have a core competency, Amazon with books, right? We just do books. And then they moved into other things, and you built your platform, you built your user base, you built the people that love you. And it gave you the intro point. And once you've dominated a sector, that's when someone should look to expand. It's not like, oh, I need more business. Where should I go? Like, let's not lean into my niche more. Let's go start a whole new other niche. Like, I think that's where people really start making poor decisions and start focusing in things in the wrong direction a little bit.
I mean, yeah. I mean, so Stephen, I think, Jonathan, maybe you read Lost and Founder, so you'll know, but one of the biggest regrets that I have at Moz was in my later years as CEO there, I got overconfident. I was sure we were doing so well, right? The company was growing so fast, and we were attracting all this investment and attention and market leadership position, blah 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 blah. I was certain that we could go after tons more different audiences and solve a whole bunch of other problems. And it turns out we hadn't yet become the dominant player in SEO. We weren't yet solving that problem as well as we needed to, and with such a robust kind of lock on that market. And so when we tried to expand into, let's solve PR and social media marketing and email marketing and content marketing and serve all these other audiences, it was just it was a boondoggle and a nightmare. And we were not able to either execute well on that. And at the, that was the time when SEO was growing the fastest it's ever been. And Moz sort of turned away from SEO toward all these other things. It really killed the company's trajectory and took a long time even to just convince our executive team and board to turn back to SEO and focus again. And I think there's a case study for why that focus is so critical and why it makes sense to keep it long-term. And in a lot of these cases, there's so much opportunity in solving a single problem for a single audience that unless you're, I don't know, need to return billions of dollars on hundreds of millions of dollars, which is how venture works, it's not wise.
Well, that's one of the problems of taking venture money, isn't it? Rob, their idea of a large business is a little bit different than what you consider a large business, isn't it? I've almost lost my track there. I did have a point. Right, let's go on. So go on, Stephen. Go on. Sorry.
I was gonna say, I think the ability not to pivot, or the ability not to focus on more things, takes so much self-discipline. It's so easy to see a million problems and ways that you can solve that problem. And there's like this internal, I don't know, like hero complex inside of us somewhere that wants to be the solution to all of these problems. And once we feel like we've solved something good enough, like the easiest thing to do is turn and solve something else good enough instead of keep focusing on that one problem. Be like, no, I can do it better. I can do it better.
Well, I think that's the key, actually, because I don't like Balos, really. I call him Dr. Evil, really, Rand. But the one thing he does have, which is focus, is, somebody, like the founders of Facebook, focus. They're really
certainly, I would say for the first 20 years of his career, right? The first 20 years of after starting Amazon, I think Bezos had relentless focus. Now you could argue that's disappearing, right? And he's basically hired in a whole team, and he has a CEO, and
I've got a quick question.
People focus.
I've got a quick question at your beginnings, because am I correct that you did found Moz with your mother, didn't you?
That's right.
But I think you were talking about, you actually pivoted because you were a web design company, but you got into financial difficulties. You weren't that successful as a web design agency, and I think you pivoted because you were literally, you had some quite large personal debts, and have you looked back and wondered why? What was there a key reason why you had a bit of a failure, if you would classify it? Yeah. You might just totally disagree with what I've just said, but I'm thinking it's based on fact, on public statements that you've made. Have you looked back and came to any conclusion why you failed as a web designer? But when you pivoted to SEO, it turned for you, didn't it?
I think there's a vast variety of reasons, right? But the big ones are, I was not a very talented web designer. I didn't find any ways to stand out from the rest of the field of web design. The web design for a long time, I think, has been viewed as a commodity, right? So there's just, it is more difficult to stand out in that field. It's more difficult to build a brand and a name for yourself. My timing with SEO was impeccable, right? I pivoted to SEO and started this SEO blog at a time when there were very few other publications talking openly and transparently about how to do SEO. I happened to be good at, actually, that's not true. I was terrible at blogging. I was terrible at being a, sort of transparent educator, but because I practiced so much, for years, right? I was publishing 5 nights a week on the Moz blog, and it was probably 2 years before it got any sort of traction, right? So I had that patience to be willing to invest in a skill, and, I was obsessed with sort of, being part of that industry and wanting to get attention and get covered. And it eventually worked, right? Eventually paid off, and at a great time, because when we built the audience of people who were interested in SEO and then eventually switched from consulting to software, we had tens of thousands of people who were reading the Moz blog, who wanted exactly the product that we provided. And it was a time when there were very few other products. So we didn't even have to be that great at building product to really stand out in the field, right? To be the obvious solution. So tons of reasons why Moz in those, those sort of 7 years I was CEO did so well. And the web design business, I never had any of those things. I mean, a big part of it too is kid drops out of college and doesn't know what the heck he's doing. And, it's just bad at everything business related. What I really should have done, and what I would urge anybody else to do, is join a few other companies, see how other people do it. Even if they do it wrong, you can at least learn from that experience. And I didn't. Everything I did at Moz was, well, we've never done this before and I've never seen anyone else do it. Let's try it.
Over to you, Stephen.
There's probably a sense of creativity there, though, that like, if you don't see somebody else do it, like you're kind of like a blank slate and you get to kind of make things up. And there's probably something like that's kind of cool or genius that can come from that, right? Like
I do think that there is a lot of data out there showing that entrepreneurs and creatives, right, who enter a field that they have no experience in, actually do innovate more than those who've been in a field for a long time, which kind of makes sense, right? If you've been in a field for a long time and you've seen lots of other people do it, you sort of get accustomed to a set of rules and guidelines. Whereas if you approach something from an outsider perspective, you can perhaps see things that other people can't. Granted, I don't know whether that disruption is always the healthiest thing, but it certainly is a common trait among many innovators in new fields.
Kind of like transition the conversation a little bit. So you were doing Moz SEO stuff, and now you're doing SparkToro. Why the shift, and why? I mean, I'm sure there was a bunch of, like, we talked about all these problems that one can solve, right? Yeah. Why that problem? Like, why did that resonate with you? Why did you choose to get into that marketplace? Maybe talk a little bit about what SparkToro is, just for people that like don't know.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, I probably should have done that when Jonathan kindly offered to have me introduce myself. So SparkToro is an audience research tool. You can essentially, go to SparkToro and say, I want to know more about chemical engineers in the UK. I want to know more about architects in Los Angeles. I want to learn more about people who use the hashtag men's fashion online. I want to learn about people who play Dungeons and Dragons. And then SparkToro can tell you, extraordinary amounts of data based on crawling and indexing public profiles that match the audience that you're looking for, right? So Stephen, in your case, like, oh, okay, we found Stephen Souter and he's at, here's his LinkedIn, and that points to his website, which points to his Twitter and his, YouTube profile and his Facebook page and his Instagram. And like, we connect all those up and now we have this one profile, and Stephen talks a lot about WordPress issues and about web page load speeds and about accessibility problems and whatever it is. I don't know, street art. I'm making assumptions based on your background, but all of those things now are associated with this anonymized, right? Because we anonymize and aggregate this data, even though it's technically public. we choose not to show the personally identifiable information in SparkToro. And then what we can do is say, oh, okay, well, 6,940 people have tweeted about or posted about on Instagram or shared on Facebook or LinkedIn a public update that includes the word street art in the last 3 months. And here is what they follow. And here's the podcast they listen to. And here's the YouTube channels they subscribe to. And here's the words and phrases that they use in their bio. And here's their demographic data and like all this really, really interesting stuff. And if you wanted to get that before SparkToro, like, I don't know, surveys, right? Like big market research firms that cost hundreds of thousands of dollars to do this type of work. And yeah, it's just a royal pain in the butt. So, so this kind of data is awesome if you have the right problem that you need to solve. Like I need to know the demographics of my competitor's audience compared to mine. I need to build a great persona for my market research project. I need to find hashtags that my audience is using so I can do better Instagram ad targeting. I need to find podcasts I can pitch for my, digital PR plan. All of those kinds of things and hundreds more is what people use SparkToro to do. The reason we did it, so there's two big ones. First off, when I left Moz, it was a really emotional experience. Like it was a really just intense, tough.
It always makes me laugh, Rand. People say, it's business. Emotion is not linked. Well, emotion, of course, it's linked to your business.
Come on, what human being can disassociate? Only sociopaths can disassociate their emotions from their professional life, right? The thing that takes up like the overwhelming majority of their, time and energy. So when I left Moz, right, it was super emotional. I was the founder. I'd been the CEO for a long time. I had sort of disagreed with company direction and with leadership and with my board for, years after I stepped down. And I sort of, I wrote in the blog post when I left Moz that on the scale of, 0 to 10, right, where 0 is security escorts you out of the building and 10 is, everyone's hugging and laughing and it's the happiest day and you're sort of graduating. My departure was a 4. So like not 0. It wasn't security escorting me out. I carried my own box out, but it was a non-ideal experience.
I personally thought you handled it with great grace, actually.
Yeah, you should ask Moz's leadership what they thought.
but I think I'm talking about publicly.
Yeah,
the public.
Oh no, that's what I'm talking about too.
Oh, right.
They really. I can tell you there was a whole like fight between their lawyers and my lawyers. I had to hire lawyers for like 9 months about Lost and Founder, about the book, right? And whether it could be published and whether they got to review it first. And oh my God.
There we go. You've got to keep the lawyers fed, haven't you?
Oh. But this really emotional experience led me to sort of internally just feel that I could not feel satisfied with my career if I went to, work for another company. And even if I did a great job and, got paid a lot of money or whatever, I just couldn't. So I talked to Geraldine, who's always been incredibly supportive of my entrepreneurial ventures, my wife. And she said, I shop at the Goodwill and the TJ Maxx. Like, I don't need anything. You do what's right for you. And so I wanted to start another company. I wanted to prove to myself and frankly, probably to my old board of directors that I could do it again, right? That's why I wanted to prove that they didn't back the right horse, right? By I don't know, rejecting my insight. I know that's egotistical to say. I know it's
no, it isn't at all. Because I'll just give you a quick bit background. I was quite successful in the UK in retailing, not to no level of success compared to you. And I came to America with my American wife, and I had a fair bit in the bank. And I won't go into the detail, but I went into a business, and I got screwed. and I lost most of my money. So I started WP-Tonic and another company, and I've been at it for the past 5-6 years, just to, I'm determined to get a positive ending. I'm a bit older than you, Rand. I haven't. I wish I was your age, but
you don't look a day older. So.
There we go. But I'm determined to turn it around, and I'm slowly am. But what do they say? What doesn't kill you? What doesn't kill you makes you stronger, doesn't? That's the saying, isn't it?
I mean, let's keep our fingers crossed for that one. I definitely feel there's an aspect of pride that I don't love. I wish that I didn't feel these feelings of, I don't know, almost wanting to prove somebody else wrong, but it is a great motivator.
It is, isn't it? It gets you up, doesn't it? We're going to wrap up the podcast part of the show. Hopefully, Rand's going to agree to stay with us a little bit longer. We're going to be talking about diversity, talk about a hot subject, but it should be an interesting discussion. You'll be able to see this part of the interview plus the bonus part on the WP-Tonic YouTube channel. Also, if you can do us a favor and give us a review on iTunes, God knows how iTunes works. Talk about a black box, but we need more reviews. Rand, what's the best way for people to find out more about you and what you're up to?
Sure. So anyone can go to SparkToro.com and make a free account, run some free searches, see what it's all about. And I am most active sort of publicly on Twitter, where I'm at Randfish.
That's great. And Stephen, how can people find out more about you and what you're up to?
Head over to zipfish.io, run a speed test, see how much faster we can make your website.
We'll see you next week with another great interview. And like I say, you want to see the rest of this discussion, go over to our YouTube channel and watch the bonus content. We'll see you next week, folks. Bye. So on to bonus content, Rand. So diversity is a big subject. As I was saying to you, one of the things that came on the radar about how not to do things is what happened at BaseCamp. I really admire the team at BaseCamp and the founders, that they are kind of like yourself, kind of legends in the kind of development world. One of them developed Ruby on Rails, they're well known. And then we had, this implosion that can only be described at BaseCamp. I'm sure it's not affected the enormous amount of money that's still coming into BaseCamp. What did you make? Did you take it as a sign of, a clear way of not handling diversity issues in a company? What happened at BaseCamp?
I mean, I feel like what David and sorry, what's the other founder's name? I forgot.
Yeah, it's mostly Dave. The other one always forgets. I always forget it as well. Don't know why.
Yeah, but the two, the two of them sort of, I think, went much further than having a diversity issue. I mean, I think they obviously do suffer from DEI problems as well as do most companies in tech, right? It's a very, very white, very male.
Well, can I just slightly interrupt, Rand? I'm not being rude, but I'll give you another bit about me. I have dyslexia, right? I was going to say I suffer, but I don't consider it. For a long time in my life, I kind of used it as a crutch to get me off the hook for failure. Oh, it's based on my dyslexia, right?
Right.
But I do, because of it, I have a slight speech impairment, especially when it comes to foreign names, right? Stephen will give evidence about this. Some of our guests, my pronunciation of their names is horrific. But I don't, but when you have a list of your clients and when they're foreign clients, you have a special list and you take the piss out of them because they've got strange foreign names. I don't think you would allow that to be distributed. in your company, and I don't think I would allow it either. It puzzled me why these two really bright founders would allow a list of their clients that have foreign sounding names to take the piss out of them. We got any insight what was going on, Rand?
It is really hard to fathom how that type of, it's obviously an othering sort of thing, right? I want to say that this, whatever, a name like Jonathan Denwood or Steven Sauter or Rand Fishkin, like that's American because it's white and because it is colonialist, right, in history, as opposed to all the other names that make up, a massive portion of the United States' population. I think 45% plus, 40 something percent plus. Those people don't get to be, I don't know, American or common or normal or regular, whatever it is. And so obviously you are creating a separation of us and them. And you are instituting that in a way that is intentionally, intentionally meant to make fun of them. That kind of stuff would never fly in grade school, right? We know it's wrong from kindergarten on. And yet to institutionalize it and say, yeah, that's part of our company culture, is maintaining a list like this and adding funny new names that come in. I don't know. It is both hateful. I don't know that I'm not saying they hate all those people, but it is a hateful thing to do. And it's also very clearly it's very clear that they didn't care what employees who might not match that, whatever white American history, that they didn't care what they thought.
Would you agree? Because you've got a lot more experience of a reasonably sized company and being the front person, the CEO. Would you agree that there's a lot of transference? You're seen as almost like a father figure in the company, as kind of archetypal, and a lot of the tone and the way things are done, the culture of the company, really comes from you, the founder. What's your thoughts about that?
Yeah, absolutely 100% true. I don't think it's not always necessarily the founder, but it is always the people who are in the senior most leadership positions. So, your CEO and your executive team, that's where this flows from. And really it's the CEO in 99% of these cases. I think in the case of BaseCamp, both Jason Fried and DHA's David, both of those guys were sort of senior leadership positions. They were nearly co-CEO, although I think one has the CTO title. But yeah, that's where culture flows from. And that's where responsibility for culture comes from. So when I look at this, and I see, whatever, 35 or 40% of the staff quit after this sort of explosion, and
well, some people have publicly stated that they think they did it on purpose because they wanted to reduce their staff. I don't think so. Do you?
I don't think so either. I think that's very unlikely, but I do think that they really did feel like they were fed up with conversations about being kind to people who weren't like them, right? And a lot of the United States, unfortunately, calls that politics, but it's not politics, right? It's not like, well, should we zone that neighborhood for multi-story buildings, or like, what should the tax code be, or which senator should we elect? That's my camera's got too hot.
No.
It's crazy warm today.
Well, you mentioned the word politics, didn't you?
I know. So it got too hot. I'll switch to this one. But the reality is that while people call that politics, it's just being kind and thoughtful to other people.
Well, it's called decency, isn't it?
It's total common decency. It's only in the last 6 or 7 years that we've started to refer to this stuff as politics. It was never politics, when I was a kid and growing up, oh, you're going to be real shitty to the not white kids. That's racism. That's not politics. Oh, you're going to make fun of people for their name. That's just being a mean bully. That's not politics. So it's very odd to me. But unfortunately, I think what really sucks with this particular incident is that they.
Yeah, I want to make it clear I'm not picking on BaseCamp. I just think it was just a good example of a general thing, because I think both founders are great guys and interesting people, aren't they?
I think they're interesting people. I'm not 100% sure they're great guys, right? My standard for great guys is higher than that.
Yeah, I'll be charitable there, but I try to be charitable.
And look, right. What I would love to see, and I hope to see, is that they learn from this experience, that they apologize, that they change and grow. That's what I ask for from people, and I think that is what we can all reasonably ask for from people as a society. Everyone makes mistakes. We're all human, but we apologize, we change, and we grow. They have not apologized. They've doubled down. They're not changing. They're sticking with it, and they're not growing, right? They literally shrank the company, and then the only people that really want to apply there are people who have these sorts of similar points of view. So if they're looking to build a monoculture of people who are generally comfortable with, or really do want to engage in that sort of mean-spirited otherism, and I don't even know what to call it. Just
no, thanks for that. You were right to pull me up there. I was being a bit too charitable there. I try and see the best. I'm a bit cynical anyway. A couple of my friends, I'm English cynical, so I'm trying to change my ways and be a bit more charitable. But you are right. So in general, I think tech has it. They tend, in the larger companies or with the medium companies, they think by saying, oh, we're inclusive, or they hire a director of inclusivity, whatever they call it. They think that solves the problem. Do you think they're deluding themselves a bit? Or is it a bit linked to our first part of our interview? It's just for the public consumption, really.
I think it's a calculated PR move. I don't think they are fooling themselves or anyone inside the company. I think that if they wanted to make real investments, there are ways to make real investments. A few companies have. It's very uncommon, right? But what you do things like, hey, we're going to bring on, underrepresented folks to our board of directors. We are going to change our leadership team. We are going to implement some significant changes to our recruiting methodology such that we over-index on sort of branding ourselves as an employer to communities that we've previously never reached. And then, right, if you do those things, you can become a very inclusive company. And even if you're not ready to do those things or willing to do those things, you can at least shut down the terrible stuff that does happen, right? Like the BaseCamp thing, the Coinbase example, which is really, really similar. These are Google, right? Google's basically like, oh, AI researchers, told us.
Yeah, that was a nightmare, wasn't it?
Jesus, I mean, it's just unfathomable to me, right? Your AI researcher team, you hire some of the best people in the world. You have some of the strictest hiring processes in the world. You bring on these folks who are literally award-winning researchers. They do incredible AI research. And then you tell them, hey, this is going to make us look bad, so you may not publish it. And also you're fired. Oh, and anyone who supports you, also fired. And all the people who did the walkout, screw them, we're not listening. And anyone who criticizes us, too bad, we're Google. What are you going to do?
Just get on your bike, lads. let's finish off with a more light-hearted question. You know, I love talking to people. I love podcasting. I like a good argument and a good chat with really, you know, bright people like yourselves. But if you had your own podcast and you could interview anybody, who would you like to interview?
Oh my God. I mean, there's so many people who absolutely fascinate me. You know what? I have been incredibly impressed. I know this is sort of an odd throwback, and I don't know, you know, how much you paid attention to like American politics in the 90s and early 2000s, Jonathan, but Stephen, you're here in the US, right?
Yep. Yeah.
Oh, he's much younger. He's a bit, can't you see? He's a bit
so,
of a. I don't. He's in kindergarten in the 80s, right? I'm sorry.
Have you followed Monica Lewinsky and her career sort of over the last 10, 15 years? Like
I have not. No. What is she up to?
She is absolutely extraordinary. Just like, I mean, you can see why she sort of got that internship at the White House at such a young age, because she is remarkably intelligent and thoughtful, and has just built this, you know, incredible career despite this terrible thing that happened to her, you know. Yeah,
I did see a tweet from her to that.
You know, I'm not trying to be funny. She had sex with somebody. You know, I found the whole. I don't want to go down in details.
Sorry.
But I found the whole thing bizarre about the need to discuss people's sexual. You know.
Sure. Well, let's just leave it at a terrible thing happened to her, and it was committed by the president of the United States, and she basically became a punchline on a bunch of late night TV shows.
She was
dragged through the mud, but has built an incredible career regardless of this, you know, awful thing in her past, and awful thing that happened to her, right? And sorry, Stephen, you were about to say you saw it.
Oh, I saw a tweet from her, like the whole HBO Max email thing. I don't know if you saw that on Twitter with the like they're like, yep, it was the intern. And then all these people have been like tweeting out like the nicest things to the intern ever. And I saw a tweet from her saying like, hey, like, you know, things happen, you know, you can seem like the bad person, but like you're making the system better or something. Like I forget what it was exactly. What her like
I mean,
but it's just like it was just like the nicest thing in the world. And it was just like, oh, that's cool.
She's so kind-hearted but tough as nails, and
I
would love to interview her.
Yeah, I was just thinking when you were saying it, it's in a way it's linked to BaseCamp and what you pointed out to me, and thank you for doing that, Rand. The thing with the president is why, you know, so obvious. All you had to do was say, yeah, I did have sex with this lady, and I'm sorry, I shouldn't have done that. And
I mean, what you really had to do...
It's causing me a lot of embarrassment and problems in my marriage, but that's a personal matter, and I've got to discuss it with my wife.
I disagree. I really disagree, Jonathan.
Yeah.
In my opinion, I was having this argument with someone about Bill Gates recently, right? Where they were like, oh, well, we shouldn't, you know, happen to know about Bill Gates's private life and all this kind of stuff. I'm like, no, that is 100% wrong. In my opinion, if you are building a brand and that brand is connected to, you know, the outcome of hundreds of millions of people's lives, in Bill Clinton's case, billions of people's lives, in Bill Gates's case, probably billions of people's lives as well, you have tied yourself, your personal brand and the way that you behave and who you are, all of those things are up for judgment, and the world and millions of people will judge the things that you believe and the things that you represent by your actions in your personal life.
Oh, I think you misunderstood me slightly. I think the media were totally justified in running the story, but it's the way that he handled it. Because
so I'm saying what he needed to do was not apologize. What he needed to do was recognize that he could not engage in those kinds of behaviors. Yeah. That once he became
he chose to purge it himself, didn't he?
He chose to semi-consensually rape a young woman, right? Like, I don't think there can be any doubt that the power structure there means that it is, you know, we would absolutely view it today as
well, it wasn't, was it? You know, you're absolutely right to point that out.
And so
the power dynamics were
so the
totally skewed.
The right thing to do was the right thing to do is do not use your power to take advantage of young women who work for you, especially while you are the president.
Well, it's not the wisest thing, you know, but would you
and
like
here I thought, Jonathan, I thought we were ending this on a lighter note. I thought that was the goal here.
But I know it was. Yeah,
I mean, I wonder.
You don't. Do you want to know who I would like to interview?
Yes, who would you like to interview?
I'm going to butcher his surname. Peter Fry, one of the founders. Is it Fry? One of the founders of PayPal.
Oh God, Peter Thiel.
Thiel, yeah.
Oh,
Peter
he's a
Thiel.
nightmare of a human.
Well, this is the point, Rand.
Yeah.
I don't agree with his politics. I don't agree with some of his statements, but I would be fascinated to interview him, because even though there's many areas we would have a lively discussion, and I'm sure the sparks would fly, but on the intellectual level, I think it would be a fascinating, well, he might not find it that intellectually interesting, but I would find it really, because for all his so obvious weaknesses, he is a thinker, even if you don't agree with a lot of the stuff that comes out of his mouth.
Yeah, I don't know. I have so little interest in people who are like, oh, I'm rich and therefore I must be smart, and so I deserve to be on a global stage, and I deserve to. I care, like, I love kind people. I love people like you and Stephen. I love people like Monica Lewinsky.
Well, Stephen might be kind. I'm not too sure.
You can tell though, right? Like when we have conversations like this, I feel you can feel someone's like humanity and kindness come through, and that's what I feel from both of you, and I think that's a wonderful thing. That's what I want to see more of in the world. Man, Peter Thiel, I hope no one gives him a microphone ever again. So. Oh
well, you don't hold your punches. I'll give you that, right? I think
he's not going to be funding any of my startups anymore.
No, I don't think so either. I don't think that would be a good fit, actually, Rand. I think you've already sampled a bit of that, and that's not a. I think that would go down like a bucket of sick with you. I think it's time to end this conversation. It's been fantastic, Rand. I really enjoyed it. You have to come back. Well, you are coming back in the near future, but to the interview show sometime next year, you have to come back. I really enjoyed the discussion. Hopefully you have. We'll see you next week, folks, with another great interview. See you soon. Bye.
Stephen and Jonathan, thanks for having me.
Bye. He's off.